Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're at the spot, the place, where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're at your spot, your favorite place, the best podcast on the planet. We're going to New Zealand. Yes, the land down under. We're going to be with Annwyn. She has a special gift. Her gift is working with people through grief. Some of you have seen my posts that I am going through that right now. But I've got a little different philosophy. I got a little different take on it, and it's making it more palatable. I am not saying that I am over it. I'm not saying that the grief is not going to come, because it comes in ebbs and flows. But if you are able to understand the human nature versus the soul nature, you will be able to soar. And she has written an amazing book, Flying in the Face of Grief, the Ever Being of Life. So we're going to talk to her about that and a whole lot more. Let's welcome her to the show. How are you, Annwyn?
I'm so well. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here and to share the experiences that I believe will support many.
Yes. You have a very interesting philosophy on how this can actually be a joyous transition. And I agree. It can be shocking, but there's a maturity level, there's a spiritual level, there's a religious discipline, there's a whole lot of contributing factors. And grief can be of many things. It could be a loss of a person, a job, a relationship, your finances, how you go through these metamorphoses of change. How did you find yourself working with this population and this and coming to this realization?
First of all, I heartily agree with you, and I suspect that our perspectives and philosophies about grief are quite similar. So it'll be interesting to discover that as we go along. And I also want to just say that, yes, to acknowledging all the different kinds of grief. There's a myriad of reasons why people grieve, and I think grief is endemic over the whole planet at the moment. People are grieving for the world that we used to have, for the lives that they used to have, and perhaps for those not understanding the great shift in consciousness that is happening, it's very distressing, it's disturbing. And so I really understand why it's so important to talk about grief and how it can be an amazing journey. Of course, it's not joyful at first. It's really hard work. There are tears. There are many hard days. And that's how it was for me when my 17-year-old teenage son, Tim, died in a car crash one afternoon, just literally out of the blue. And a phone call that changed my life forever. And I could not have stood here and said all those years ago that I would find it a joyful event that I would even do again, but I would say that now. And so I say that to encourage people who are at the beginnings of grief or partway through the journey of grief. Keep going and allow that process, allow the feelings, and trust the process, knowing that it's not something that has to be with you for your life. We used to talk about people being crippled for life by grief. Well, we do not have to be that way. For many, it has been that way, but I'm here to tell you there are many other ways of looking at this. And I would honestly say my life has been transformed. I am flying higher than I used to fly because of the sacred journey through grief. And that's what it is. It's a sacred rite of passage. It has an extremely high purpose. It's not for the faint-hearted. And if you put your hand up to experience grief, well, I congratulate you and I acknowledge you for your bravery. But now I really want to encourage you to be super brave and allow the full journey to take place. And I might say that many people have written about this topic of grief, and from personal experience, as is the case with me, and with all due respect, many authors have written their books maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years into their journey. I didn't write mine until a good decade later, when I had fully come through the whole journey and can tell you about the richness and the fullness of the entire journey. It's quite important because if I had written my book in fifth or sixth year, I would have written what the others have written. I would have talked about learning to survive. I would have talked about resilience. But I want to tell you that we can do better than that, because that is simply accommodating grief. That is learning how to live with grief, and very gracefully too, I might add. That's great. But there is more. We can go further. We can fully recover and thrive, not just survive grief.
Now, you say you used a very loaded term, accommodating, living side by side.
Yes.
Incorporating it in your life, making room for it.
Yes.
Holding space.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
I did know, but within the last 2 or 3 years, I can feel, again, I posted what happened with my family member that I lost, and I asked people to hold space. I feel like I am a hot air balloon and I need to tether myself down. There is so many people floating with me, holding that space with me. I feel comforted. I know that I'm loved. I'm being seen. I'm being heard. But I'm also dealing with something that is inevitable, and that is a transition, a loss of life.
How to go forward. Yes.
Some are given, some are given short journeys, others are given long journeys. But it's finding that I think a lot of times so many people are afraid of their own mortality. That's the first thing. Oh, okay, something happened. What's going to happen? But it's not so much about how you die. I think it's more about how you live. What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And, the subtitle of my book is The Ever Being of Life. So what does that mean? It means that life is continuous. It's ever being. And there are no deaths. There are no endings.
Mm.
But there are stages and there are completions of cycles. And when we release our physical body and return to our non-physical state of consciousness, we have simply completed, ended a cycle. But I would like to go back to the point you brought up about accommodating, because I think this is super important. Because I went through this myself. In the early part of my journey, I was very aware, living in New Zealand, we're taught to be resilient because we have that pioneering spirit. A lot of us come from families that arrived here on sailing ships and tilled the land and set up agriculture and set up towns and all of that sort of thing. We're sort of known to have what we call a number 8 wire resilience. And that's number 8 wire is the wire that you use fencing when you're fencing in sheep, making paddocks and fields. So we talk about this really tough part of our character, which is resilience. And so I fell into that trap of believing that. And what I actually did, instead of allowing myself to grieve fully, of course I grieved, but I got to a point where I thought, well, this isn't good enough. I need to toughen up. So I went sailing. I actually learned how to sail, and I eventually lived 6 years on a sailing yacht. And what I had done, I reinvented myself. I even gave myself another name. I called myself Corky. Corky, yeah, from a family name, which was McCorkindale. So I took the cork and became Corky, this buoyant cork, bouncing around the ocean joyfully. What really I was doing, I was having an amazing adventure, but I was running away from grief, and I simply reinvented my persona. Now, eventually, I met a partner who I later learned was karmically planted there, a soul contract, because he was there to show me how inauthentic I was being. He never once called me Corky, not once, because he knew that wasn't me. And so he challenged me. He was the ultimate button pusher. For 6 years we were together, and sometimes we'd have terrible arguments, and I'd fly back to New Zealand and process it and work it out, and then we would join up again. And it was like we were starting from a new platform every time we rejoined. But over those 6 years, this beautiful man, who you'll read about in the book, he showed me exactly who I wasn't. He showed me all the roles that I'd been playing, all the masks that I had worn, until the point where I really didn't know who I was. I had to leave the boat at that time. I came back to New Zealand and began living on land again. And that's when I really went through the dark night of the soul. Now that's so important. It's so important. It's the time where you have to give up everything. You've lost sight of everything. You have no compass anymore. You don't know which way is up. And you just have to surrender. It's really frightening. But somebody gave me the book by Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth. And there I was, reading about the same experience that Eckhart Tolle went through. And the name, The Dark Night of the Soul. Oh my gosh. I realized I wasn't going insane. And I started to realize the incredible work I had done on my shadow self all of that time when I was sailing. So I had done a lot of mental and psychological processing and releasing of my human self and my human nature, but I still had a deeply aching heart. Now was the time to heal my heart. So you see, it's very much a multi-layered process. There's the mental healing, the emotional healing, the heart healing, the spiritual healing, the physical healing, and it's all got to be balanced out and integrated. So yes,
people relate the word grief with hurt and pain and sorrow.
Yes.
I don't necessarily do that. I associate the word grief with separation, understanding, compassion, and resilience. Because you have to have those characteristics to get through this thing called grief.
Why do you say separation? I'm intrigued. Why would you put the word separation as a part of your language for getting through grief?
Because it is a separation or a pulling back of layers of something that maybe I was used to, that I lived with, that I seen, and now I'm apart from it. But again, like you say, you may not be separated. It just may be in a different form.
That's right. It's only the physical separation, isn't it? Right. And this is one of the greatest teachings that my son gave to me, because, I was communing with him. He was still very present for me. And I knew without a doubt that he wasn't gone. He was just somewhere else. He was no longer in his physical body. Yes, there is a separation from that physical body, and of course we miss them so much. Mm-hmm. But gradually over the years, I came to know him from the soul nature, mm-hmm. and not from my human nature. So right. I gradually came to release the notion and the role that I was his mother and he was my son, but that we are both souls. He happens to be in a disincarnate state at the moment. I am incarnated. So, but the thing is, we still have the same relationship, and it's been so beautiful. And the image behind me, which is the cover of my book, it speaks so much, because really, especially in the first years, I felt I was under his wings. He was always there to wrap those big wings around me. Now, I really don't need him in that way. And so he's not as present. I have other guides and teachers who are very present. But every so often he pops in and checks on me, says hello, and we have an exchange. But yes, so the separation was something that I really learned, was just something that we'd been taught because we had forgotten about our soul nature. And really, I think the biggest gift of going through the journey of grief and loss We have the opportunity to observe our conditioned human nature, what I call our acquired human nature. I came to observe that and realized, as my sailing companion had pointed out, that wasn't who I was. So we go through this process, and I call a chapter in my book the babushka doll. You know, the little Russian painted dolls, you take one off and it's a smaller one and you take the layer. That's what the process is like. You take off all these layers and layers, like peeling the onion, until I got down to the tiny little babushka doll right at the center. But that's who I really was. Now I had to grow that. And that's what I grew back as, the soul nature, not the human nature. What an incredible journey.
What type of response, in all honesty, that you get? Because this is a very different take on the traditional grief recovery specialist. You know, you walk through the process, you do time therapy, you do a lot of shadow work, a lot of meditation, all that. You can incorporate those modalities, but how are people receiving what you're saying as far as the comfort? Because when you and I talked, we connected right away. We knew that there is, but again, it is the soul having a human experience. And all souls don't want to come back. They're like, we're doing our thing here and it's okay. They have other work to do. And we still think small. And we still think small and
to answer your question, it's been received really well, and people use terms that I love. For example, a reader in America said, I love how you're describing your journey because it's not a cookie cutter prescribed process. And, I sort of naturally shied away from that. And again, all due respect to any practitioner in any modality that does have a step-by-step formula, because that suits a lot of people, but it didn't suit me. I'm much more step sequential person. I love the big picture. And when I began to understand the big picture, that we are souls having an experience in this human bodysuit, it just made so much sense to me. And it really helped me understand and to accept the journey that I was on. My daughter, by contrast, Laura, she was barely 15 and a half when her beautiful darling brother died, and she was devastated. And she almost took her life in her grief. And it wasn't until about 11, 12 years later, she came to me one day and she said, Mum, I've been for a walk on the beach. I sat down and I finally decided to forgive Tim for leaving me. And she said, and I also forgave 4 other friends who had actually taken their lives round about the same time. And she said, as soon as I did that, I looked up and there were 5 seagulls, 5, circling above me. And I was so thrilled because that was such a turning point for her. A, that she'd left her anger behind. B, she'd accepted the part of the journey of the soul, and she was coming to understand that. And she's just brilliant. I just love the way she has grown.
2, 3.
It was a turning point for her. Yes.
Well, that's very brave of her to admit that. A lot of times people won't admit that I have taken the steps for forgiveness, that I was angry, that I was hurt, that I was disappointed. They don't use those words. I'm sad and I'm crying and I miss and I get that. But now you have others in a spiritual quantum realm that are able to do magical things for you. When my mother transitioned, it was beautiful. I laid my chest upon her chest. I felt her very last heartbeats. I felt the very last breath that she had taken. She had given me permission to stay. I had given her permission to go. There were no unanswered questions. But a lot of people don't have that. Some people have a lot of turmoil and chaos and secrets. And, like my situation with my person, they lit into me. He gave me, what for, but it was a release. And that's how I took it. I didn't take it as a personal attack. It was something that they had upon their heart that they had to let go. So I don't take ownership of that. You don't have to take ownership of everything, Brains. It's not always about you.
Absolutely. And on some level, not consciously, but unconsciously, he would know that he was about to depart. Mm. And so it might have been his anger at knowing that he was leaving, that he was expressing, for example.
Well, there were certain things that he had said to me. He says, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not worthy, or maybe I'm not this. And I'm like, well, wow. I said, but you are. You need to change your vernacular and, think I've tried and I have not succeeded. I said, well, you're 36 years old. You're still, you still have a lot of living to do. But maybe he did not feel that way. And people know. They know when something is going to happen, a life-changing event. So, Arwen, I'm so excited that you are willing to share an excerpt from the book, Flying in the Face of Grief, the Ever-Being of Life. Share that with us.
I'm delighted to, and it just works so beautifully with what we were saying about the ever-being of life, there being no endings. It's right at the end of the book, it's almost the very last page. Dearest mother, this is my son, I greet you with the greatest love. Now that we both stand liberated from human limitations, our work together takes on a new meaning. So referring to the fact that he's no longer bound by human nature, of course, because he's not human anymore. And I'm no longer bound because I have released that. I'm now soul-directed. So our work together takes on new meaning. Me in my realm, you in yours. An adventurous time lies ahead. But this time it is soul-directed, not driven by a desperate ego. My heart swells with joy when I peer into your future. There is much to look forward to. But for now, I'm honoured to share these words for our first collaboration, our book. There is no ending, and that the relationship we have now, dear mother, extends beyond worlds, the universe, time and space. And from this place, I see more than ever and can bring help and support more than ever. But this freedom is not just for me and not just for you, dear mother. Through this book and through all of those you are meeting as a part of this journey is a great gift. My life is not cut short. And this is the message, because for those who lose someone, especially a child, this loss is one of the greatest pains and pities they can have. So my message is, there are no endings. I am the ever-being of life.
That is so beautiful, because again, you channeled that energy, and I know I do that in my studio. I can feel the presence of those that have transitioned, but also the energy of those that are still here, because there's a lot of people that are moving in and out of grief. They feel that they're supposed to feel a certain way, that you're supposed to cry, that you're supposed to bargain, you're supposed to be angry, you're supposed to negotiate, you're supposed to suffer. But again, settling in, understanding, allowing yourself some grace and some compassion, understanding that this is not the end, but this is a new beginning.
Yes.
And it's a new beginning for us as well as the person that transitioned. I know a person told
me.
You're
so right. Yeah, it's like it is a new beginning for both, the one that's gone back to the spirit realm and the one that remains behind. And that's the gift and that's the offer. But unfortunately, many do not take up that invitation to really look at their life and examine what is working, what is not, what's in balance, what is not, and how can I really work with this new place that I'm in my life now. And that's true of any life-changing event, isn't it? You know,
Absolutely.
whether it was COVID or whether it's a weather event or all of the things, the political upheavals that we're experiencing now. You know, what is our place here? How can I be at peace with this? How is it impacting my life? What benefit is it bringing to me? What is it making me look at? Because really, everything that is happening around us is a message for us, isn't it? It's a
Exactly.
messenger. Yeah.
Just like you said, what is the impact on our life right now? You
Yes.
cannot predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen, and you can't relive the past. You only have the gift of the present, which is right now. And how is that going
Yes.
to
And so,
impact you? And but also, how are we going to be of service? How are
yes.
we going to be of service to one another? How are
Well,
you
that
going to
present
hold
moment
space?
holds it all. That present moment holds all of that because in that present, if each present moment is filled with love, compassion, prosperity, noble thoughts, if you do that continuously, consistently, that's shaping your future. That's how you predict the future because if you're in that space in a consistent, constant way, that is your future,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With vision.
And well, I think this is absolutely brilliant. And brains is a soft sell. Okay, everything is a sales job. And I don't mean that in a snarky kind of way. I mean, I really want you to understand you're selling your personality, your charm, your wisdom, your pain, everything, your look. So when you introduce this idea or this concept to someone, you are selling them a new idea. Your job is to close on that deal and to convince them that this does not have to destroy you, that you can learn to grow into it like a new pair of stilettos. You gotta be able to walk a different walk. You've got to,
Exactly.
you've got to
Mm,
straighten up your spine
mm.
because trust me, we are all going to experience grief.
Yes.
We are all organic. We're all going to expire. And now something that I think that parents are doing more so than they used to do is that they're being honest with children about grief and dying. I was with two separate children at different times. The first child was absolutely mortified because her mother had told her that Nana is in that box. They're going to put her in the ground and that she's just sleeping. She never experienced or had the conversation with her and allowed her child to experience what this actually is. I was with another child and we were in the car and we drove past the cemetery. And she goes, "Oh, Miss April, my grandma's over there." And I said, "Where?" She said, "She's over there resting." And I said, "She's resting?" She goes, "Yes." She says her body is resting, but her soul has went to heaven. There's a different place for her now, and it's loving and it's caring, and she's watching over me. She's my angel now. And it was two totally different,
Yeah.
it was two totally different vibes. And I felt so comfortable with the second child, and they were like 5 years old versus the other child was about 9 years old, and they were just absolutely mortified. So we have to be honest about what goes on in this thing called life. There's going to
We
be
do because,
challenges.
yeah, immediately when you told the story about the first child, I immediately thought, well, what happens when grandma comes and sits on the end of her bed and tells her how much she loves her?
Okay.
You know,
Now,
it
no,
closes.
now that's going to turn into that's going to be a fear. That's going
Yeah,
to be, instead of a welcoming of a spirit
exactly.
that is good,
Yes.
it's going to be, it's like the boogeyman under the bed.
Yeah.
My mother got rid of that. She said there is no damn boogeyman under the bed, and if he is, he better be paying rent.
I love it.
So you have to
Yeah,
tell the
gosh.
truth. So let's ask some fun questions about you, Arwen, because I know that you are a fun kind of girl. So you are now living your best life. You have written this amazing book. You have different friends and different conversations for people right now. What is something that you do to be gentle with yourself, to allow yourself grace outside of working with individuals and helping them deal with their grief?
I'm very present. I love to be in nature. So nature is my go-to. And I've just relocated to a new city just a few days ago. And I happen to be just a few minutes from a beach. So I can walk to the beach every morning and walk through that water. And I just adore it. And I can do the same at night too. So I can watch the sun come up from the ocean and then watch it go down again.
Mm-hmm.
So nature is always going to be what I turn to, and more than people, to be honest. I don't have a lot of people in my life anymore. This is something else that happens as you release the human nature and live more from your soul-directed nature. I'm not busy with friendships like I used to be, and I used to be very, very sociable.
Is that by design, or is that by an
Okay.
elevation of realization? Because some people can't connect with this. They're going to say,
Well,
this is kind of hoo-hoo, and she's like,
no, look, when it just happens when you're ready, you're ready. It's like nothing, it wasn't conscious. It just actually automatically, organically happens. You just kind of think, oh, shall I ring up so and so for a coffee date? No, maybe not. And then you realize you haven't done it. And then that, it just goes from there. So it's a vibrational thing. It's an energy, vibrational frequency thing. And that's a big part of my work now, is teaching people how to understand how energy works and vibrational frequencies. And that old saying, birds of a feather flock together. Well, that would be a human way of expressing the concept that if you're not a vibrational match, you don't come together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That
Does
makes
that make
perfect sense. Yes. What is your superpower?
My superpower is love.
Ooh.
Isn't yours?
Mine is communication, because I am able to pretty much align myself with whomever I speak to, and I'm able to vacillate. We can talk at a very high level, we can talk at a very basic level, but as long as we understand each other and we share a common goal and we learn, we can agree to disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. And I think that's
right.
something that
And I would answer that a little bit different. Sorry to interrupt. Now that I understand your question better, I would answer it a bit differently. Love's still there. But I would be an activator. I'm an activator. So what that means is that in my vibrational field, I activate other people. And so people listening to this may well be activated by my voice. People that read the book are activated when they read it. And yes, so that's a big part of my work as well. I do that with people, and I do that at particular places around the planet, like sacred sites, that sort of thing. But that's another conversation.
But I mean, you're in a beautiful part of the world that I know is a entry portal to the next civilization. I mean, it's Australia is one of the very first places that they found people and civilization. The Aborigines have an extra chromosome, so it's a very spiritual place there. The grounds are very.
Well, I'm in New Zealand, which is next door.
Yeah, but I mean that. But I'm just saying that whole region of the world.
Area, yeah. But there are portals all over the planet, and it's really about people holding the energy of the new Earth, the Christchurch consciousness, and then you create little pockets of that on the planet wherever you are. But obviously, it's going to be easier if you're in a more organic, natural environment, and that is something that we still have plenty of in this part of the world.
Right.
It's unpopulated. If you look at the world map, it's all blue around us. We're just surrounded by oceans. So, but I think other ancient continents are going to rise up again. There are continents below us, beneath us.
Absolutely. If you were a flavor of ice cream, Arwen, what flavor would you be?
Well, you may not know this one because it's a Kiwi thing. Hokey pokey.
Hokey,
Do you know hokey
hokey
pokey?
pokey? No. What is it? Give me something that it might taste like
Hokey
that I might
pokey.
be for.
So yes, so it's like you get a vanilla scoop of ice cream, but throughout the vanilla ice cream are these little golden nuggets that are gold and they're crunchy and they taste a bit like hokey pokey.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a little crunchy thing in the ice cream. Very specific to New Zealand.
If you were a flower, what flower would you be?
Hmm. I would be an iris.
Hmm, okay.
It's so beautiful. It's grown from a bulb, so it has a lot of time when it's dormant. But when it does show itself, it's quite extraordinary. And yeah, it's like another example of the ever being of life because the
Mm-hmm.
bulbs convey that consciousness, don't they? The resurrection and the renewal.
Wow. If you were a tool in the toolbox, what tool would you be?
Oh, um, maybe scissors, because I like to snip away things that don't serve anymore,
Okay.
things
That
that
makes
need
sense.
renewal.
I'd be duct tape. You do,
Why?
you could do so many things with duct tape, and it's strong. It holds it together. It's bonding. And I like that. So please tell my brains how they can get a copy of the book and how they can work with you on a much deeper level. So, Arwen, please tell my brains how they can purchase a copy of the book and get in contact with you.
Thanks, I'd love to. But for the Northern Hemisphere people, the best way to access my book or me is through the website www.annwynvibe.com. And you can either get the book via Amazon or even if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, your bookstore can also order it because it's already loaded with Ingram Spark and they supply books, bookstores. New Zealand readers can either buy it in bookstores here or they can buy it directly from me, again, through the website. It's also available as an ebook at all the usual online places. And I would love to let you know that if you want to subscribe to my newsletter, which is not very frequent, but when I do one, I'm a bit like the iris. It's a good one. You can, if you subscribe, and that you are then entitled to a 20% discount off your first healing mentoring session with me. So that's lovely to know about.
Well, I think that you have done an amazing job at uncovering what people are trying to discover. And that's a peace and that's a harmony with something that is inevitable, which is grief. Thank you, Brains, for tuning in to Here on the Edge. Please go in, love, like, share, and subscribe. Share this interview with someone that is going through something. Again, it could be a loss of a pet, it could be a loss of a partner, it could be a loss of a friendship. There's a lot of losses. Self-respect, self-dignity. How do we deal with that? How do we go beyond the ever being of life? Thank you so much, Brian. You are the best.
Thanks, April. Really loved it. Blessings.